Welcome to episode number 21 of the Castbar. Happy Noblegarden, or whatever holiday around this time you are celebrating. We also passed April Fools and it turned out to be a rather weak year. We take a closer look at raiding and the loot that keeps us coming back to it. And of course, finish it off with a review of Deadmines. Thank you, and enjoy. Welcome to the Castbar, everybody, the World of Warcraft podcast, channeling your content with no interrupts. Today is April 5th, 2015. It is 7:35 Pacific Standard Time. My name is Michael Schwahn, and with me I have Evan.
How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing good. And Florian.
Evening, gents.
Evening. Yes, top of the morning to you, except it's like nighttime. So, how you guys been doing this week?
I'm pretty well. You know, I've been doing crazy, relentless Heroes of the Storm playing, so that's just a little bit of a departure from my usual wowing it up, but still staying on top of dailies and, you know, making sure I don't fall behind in case they introduce, you know, another tier crafting, which I think they probably will. I think that's almost certainly on the horizon.
You think they'll go up to level tier 5 or whatever come the next raid tier?
Either that, or they'll introduce a new tier of craftables with the new raid tier.
So, like, just a whole new set of items for us to make?
Like a stage 1 item level 680 something, I think. Maybe, you know.
Seems sketchy. What about you, Florian? What have you
the
been
only
up to
thing
this
is,
week? No, sorry, go ahead, Evan.
Well, there's one small point. The other thing is, yeah, I mean, I think if you're catching up, if any kind of catch-up from a new level 100 to the next raid tier is going to be grueling. How much time does it take to get a level 4 craftable item these days? It's kind of relevant right now, but I can't imagine starting a new character from scratch 6 months into the future and having to do so much savage blood grinding that it would not even be funny.
It's all LFR. You don't even worry about crafting anymore. You just LFR it.
Just make it obsolete, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what we did in Pandaria. It was like, I started something new. Well, stock up on timeless gear, get into LFR for Throne of Thunder, and then I'll creep my way into Siege of Orgrimmar. Catch up. Only took, 4 weeks or so, if you were doing okay on loot.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't know if I want to repeat that, honestly. I mean, we made the most of it, but I think in a whole new iteration of the raid dungeon, I feel like Blizzard would try to improve and optimize a little bit based on player feedback.
Well, that's what we would think. And what about you, Florian? What have you been doing this week?
I've been trying to play some of that Heroes of the Storm, which I've had a small amount of success with. The internet connection is kind of holding me back, but I was able to do a few bot matches to try to start to get a handle on the game. I've never played a MOBA before, so it's been an interesting experience, to say the least. Very different from what I expected.
Well, you have started off with it with what is probably the friendliest one you could.
That is the main reason that I just chose to start off with it. And I've thought about getting into games like LoL or Dota in the past, but they have such an heavily entrenched community, and famously toxic communities as well. So I just kind of avoided that. But now that Blizzard makes a MOBA, I kind of have to play it.
You just feel just generally obligated. You're like, oh man, Blizzard, you made something. I have to play it now.
Yeah, it goes for all of us.
You know, they consistently make good games, even if it's not a genre they've done before. You know, I can pretty much count on Blizzard that it's going to be a quality product. So figured, why not give it a shot?
As long as we don't look at Diablo 3 when it was first released.
Well, you know...
Diablo 3 is a quality product now. It had a very rough time, though, when it first came out.
I wonder if Heroes of the Storm is going to end up being the kind of... I'm going to pronounce this word wrong. Inimitable the MOBA, the MOBA that all of the MOBAs kind of aspire to be, kind of like they've done with their third-person WSAD RPG.
I don't know. It'll be extremely difficult to upseat LoL. Like, even though, Dota had, this big multi-million-dollar tournament and stuff like that, and, Smite does and stuff, the way that they get that money is so much different compared to League. And League's following is just so huge that I think it'll be very, very difficult to really overtake what League has established. Do I think Heroes could do it? Sure. Especially because they have the Blizzard player base behind them. I mean, it was at their last earnings call, or whatever that report is called, that, Hearthstone was up to like 24 million players or whatever, and Heroes of the Storm already had 10 million players in the beta, so they're certainly going to have the numbers behind them. It's just a matter if they can push it well enough and tune it to have an actual competitive edge on it. I mean, because I play it a lot already, and while there is room and place for professional play, it feels very arcade-like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we ought to have an entire episode discussion about it, because there's a lot to be said there, and maybe after we've all had a little bit more experience with the game, especially when it goes into open beta, which I feel like should be soon. That'll be a really exciting kind of topic to dig into.
Is it still considered closed beta, even though you can buy your way into it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Weird. Who knows? I mean, it's so much of an already finished game, even if they are calling it beta. I mean, Hearthstone was in beta for like a year, and then just like the day it was released, they're like, and it's officially out now, and everyone's like, oh, does anything come along with that? No, we're just not going to have the beta tag on it anymore. Oh.
Right.
Okay. Can I just keep playing then? Yeah, keep playing.
You talked about the money source as being different from other games like League and Dota, but I think that's what a lot of the fine-tuning is going to be, as a matter of fact, and that's making sure that the champion and all the things you can buy are actually balanced in a way that maximizes, their margins.
Well, I'm talking less about...
I think that's a lot of fiddling.
I'm talking less about the profit. I don't have any worries that Blizzard will make tons of money on the game. But, like, the way that, like, Smite works, for example, is that when there's certain things you can buy, and if you buy them, then, like, half of whatever you bought, so, like, let's say it's $10, $5 of it goes immediately into the, like, grand tournament prize pool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they had, like, a $10 million tournament or whatever last year, because they were, like putting these items that, give money to the tournament. They were putting those on sale and trying to get lots of those things to sell so that they could have a big money tournament that was paid for by the people that play the game, rather than just them trying to figure out how to siphon it off of their revenue that they generate already so that they can put it on themselves.
So when you buy expensive skins for your favorite characters, you could even dream of a little bit of return on that investment.
Correct. Dream is a very good word for that. Alright, anyway, let's go ahead and get into the news. Welcome to the news, everybody. So there's nothing incredibly huge, but there's plenty of it, actually, this week. Very first thing on our list we have is April Fools. It actually happened right after our last episode, which was unfortunate. But, no, not quite. I guess it was right around half a week ago. Anyway, don't worry about it. So, Blizzard notoriously always does something for April Fools all the time, every year. Non-WoW related, they joked that Twitter integration was going to go into Diablo. I don't even know what they did for StarCraft, if they did anything. For Heroes of the Storm, they actually made an actual visual change of that. If you played on April Fools, all of your characters were like in big head mode. If you'd ever played like a Madden game, or 007 GoldenEye is another one that had like a big head mode. That was a much more entertaining one. And then Warcraft, they always do something to mess with us and joke with us. Some years are fantastic and make us incredibly sad that they're joking with us. And then some years, like this year, we're just like, yeah, Okay.
Right.
Did you guys do anything for April Fools?
No, I think I played a little bit of the Heroes thing, got the bobblehead kind of treatment, which is just all around absurd. So that was kind of a funny change to the landscape. But none of Blizzard, none of the WoW stuff was actually affected in game. Is that right?
No, it was nothing in game. Well, for most people at least, my UI, I use Elf UI, and so every year for April Fools, they make all of your little windows and stuff pink and have Hello Kitty behind them. So for a day of WoW, you're stuck with Hello Kitty all over the place.
Oh, you're joking.
No,
nope. Another reason I'll use Elf UI.
I like it. So, but to each their own.
No, that actually does sound fun.
What about you, Florian? Any April Fools buffoonery?
No, I'm not really into the fooling lifestyle.
How does that even work for you? You're military. Isn't that like part of your existence?
What, April Fools?
Just joking in general.
Yeah, he's trying to insinuate that you have a bunch of workers and relations doing all sorts of buffoonery about the barracks.
Yeah, I get it. That, I don't know, it just didn't happen this year.
Did you even leave the house?
That's why. Well, yeah, I had to go to work. Aside from that, no, not much else.
Oh, okay. So, Blizzard this year, their jokes were small by all considerations of things. They put out a long list of patch notes, which said, like, this is being removed, this is staying the same. The one that I immediately remember for, like, priests is that you guys know Leap of Faith, where priests can yank you, like, death grip, life grip, whatever you want to call it. It was like, can no longer be used if either character is on an elevator, can no longer be used like during combat, and can no longer be used while the priest is near a cliff or something like that. And then the next one was priests have been, and right at below that it said priests are now 80% less annoying, because we like to yank people around. But most of the patch notes were just completely lame and worthless. They touched on Tinder, definitely playing off of the popular dating / hookup app. And it was, you were going to get Tinder out of a random mission, and you'd be able to set your followers up on dates and help them find true love.
Right, which after the selfie camera thing wasn't all that far a stretch, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess it really wouldn't be that far of a stretch, but I mean, I just feel like they'd get so much more rage over that. I'm sure there'd be tons of, I might even enjoy it, which is the unfortunate part, because it would be another Facebook game type thing going into the game, which unfortunately is quite popular, because casual games. It's not anything against casual people, they're just literally casual games. And they do well, but I wouldn't, if it was real, I wouldn't be surprised. I would just be upset that Blizzard is pouring time and money into these projects.
Right, yeah, and rightfully so.
Especially when we had such a weak patch for 6.1. Like, 6.1 was a really just sad patch, and I would be rather irritated if this is what they delivered to me when they just gave me nothing, and now they're giving me something completely absurd again instead of actual content. Now,
right, exactly. You gotta draw the line somewhere.
I mean, this being, of course, unless there's awesome loot that comes from setting them up, then we can talk about it.
Well, you have to think about it like this. If they did come out with this, it would be, in a sense, the ultimate April Fool's joke. Because in the past, they've come up with April Fool's jokes that were awesome things that a lot of the player base wanted. And now they have this completely ridiculous thing that no one absolutely wants. And if they turned around and said, yeah, we're actually serious, we're going to release this, I think that would be the ultimate joke on the entire player base.
Sure. And I don't know if Florian is referencing the one I put in the show notes, but it was like back in like 2000 and I don't even remember how long ago this was. Let's see if the link even says. I can't click the link. Fine. Anyway, it was a link to a joke that they made previously regarding a new class, and it was the Dark Ranger, and they have a picture of like the old Sylvanas picture up there where she, Dark Ranger and like abilities and classes and how the thing would work, and everyone was like, oh my god, and then it ended up not being real and everyone was incredibly sad.
Right, the one I remember was probably one of the first ones they ever did, which very well might have been the first April Fools after release, and the big ticket item was this Pandaran cub pet, I think, that would follow you around, and if you right-click it, it brings up a real money interface where you can order Chinese food to your house.
Oh, man, I would be all over that.
Right, but it's too absurd to believe, honestly.
Oh, why? Come on, Blizzard. Connect to the I have a place that serves Thai food that is 1 block away from my house. And
so naturally you get delivery every time.
They actually don't deliver, but I don't mind going and getting delicious, amazing Thai food because curry is ridiculously amazing. But if they could just make it where I could just order from my game, and if they would deliver it, oh man, pull up to my window. Just let me be a true American and just embrace lazy fatness.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even remember what they did last year. It was rather underwhelming, if I remember correctly. Of course, I guess they were trying to not make people too upset by showing them awesome things that they had in mind and then taking it away from us.
Yeah, like a new hero class or a flying in Draenor.
Oh, that one would hit some very sore feet.
Exactly, right?
The other one, though, that
sore feet, is that...
Go ahead. What?
No, sore feet being a really good pun in this case.
Yeah. The other one, though, I did kind of enjoy. I wouldn't care if it did happen or didn't, and it was Bemote packs, or expression packs. And they were joking about adding a bunch of new, like, little icons, like your emojis when you're texting on your phone, the little smiley faces. You could do those in Warcraft. There's, like, new phrases that you could get for your characters in Hearthstone. You could buy expression packs for heroes and Heroes of the Storm to give them more lines and stuff to say. I enjoyed it.
It's just kind of funny. Just another thing that they're doing to improve our gameplay immersive experience. It doesn't actually help improve gameplay or immersive experience.
It would actually probably hurt immersion. Well, at least in Warcraft it would. But again, I mean, we've had that discussion of it isn't really relevant unless you're in an RP setting.
Right. I mean, on the right kind of game, premium emote content is not all that unrealistic. Just I can't imagine it in World of Warcraft.
I could even see it in World of Warcraft, but then we go into the problem of that people aren't communicating in Warcraft as much as they used to, so it's not entirely relevant.
Yeah.
There's much less talking in the game now. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. Happy April Fools, everybody! Did that seem louder than normal? Anyway.
Sounded normal to me.
Okay, maybe I'm just delusional. So, anyway, the next thing on the news is that, thankfully, this wasn't a multi-part series, because they posted about Forging Azeroth. And I'm not going to play the little intro for you, because I don't care. And basically what it is, they're promoting a video that they brought to Man-at-Arms, which if you haven't seen it, you should go onto YouTube and look up Man-at-Arms. And it's this dude who owns this really elaborate blacksmithing shop. He is a modern-day blacksmith, and he makes all kinds of cool things. And they asked him to make Gorehowl. And it's really good. Did you guys get a chance to watch it?
No, I hadn't gotten a chance to see that one. Okay.
It was pretty interesting. All their videos are always real short, and, they just show real quick snippets of going through the process. We use this to make it blah, 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 blah. This is what I use to cut it. Here's my machine that costs more than your house. Doom, 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 doom. Because he has a pneumatic hammer that he uses to forge some things. Oh, yeah. I mean, you watch him use it, he's just like, yeah, saving me, like weeks of hammering on this thing. Because it's just a high-powered pneumatic hammer that just smashes it for him, which I can't imagine.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, come to think of it, I think that's what my WoW blacksmith uses, because that's the only way I can explain forging a hammer in what seems to be like 6 strokes.
Right? So pink, I'm done. Really?
Makes a lot more sense now. I buy it. I buy it now. Yeah, that must be what's going on.
This is Warcraft. They just use magic. Even warriors, they use blacksmithing magic. No, that one out.
Yeah, absolutely. Some kind of food magic that lets them jump really high.
Definitely. I would like to be able to jump like a warrior. But it was interesting because one of the things they were talking about, they were going over like the schematics of Gorehowl and stuff, and because they make real life replicas of them, and they're not just replicas either. Like they're fully functional. And he was like, "Well, I'm gonna have to make the head of it hollow." He's like, and he traces out like a back little like just the back inch of it. He's like, because that much steel would weigh 100 pounds. He's like, so if this thing was real, it would weigh like 600 pounds. Which makes me all the more terrified of Gorehowl. I'm just like, oh god, it weighs 600.
Seriously.
No wonder orcs are bulky.
But just give it to a female blood elf, and then make a replica scale from that.
So it's going to be the size of a toothpick?
Yeah.
Of course, I know that their weapon sizing for female blood elves has been changed. I know it got a lot better. I guess some people were complaining about them being too big, so I guess they have the female human problems.
Yeah, it's so weird.
But no, you guys should definitely go check it out. What do you think, Florian? Did you watch it?
I didn't watch this one. Actually, I didn't even know about it until I checked the show notes earlier today. But I have watched others. I've seen other stuff on Man at Arms, and I highly recommend any video they make. Yeah. I'll definitely be checking it out right after this show.
They've made stuff like Sephiroth's sword, Cloud's sword. They've made like any of the Final Fantasy weapons they've probably made. They've made crazy huge warhammers. They made both the Master Sword and the Hylian shield. And also, something to note, they always use them at the end of the show. So, like, Gorehowl, they were, like, taking it to giant hunks of ham and stuff like that.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, they always use it. Like, it's not just like, okay, here you go, be careful with it. They're like, no, watch this, smush, and they, like, break down a door with it and stuff.
Did they ever tackle Frostmourne?
Yes, I'm fairly certain they did. Yeah, I'm almost positive that they did.
Man at Arms, Lich King's Frostmourne.
Yep,
looks like.
Okay, I was like, I'm almost positive that they did. So yeah, definitely go check them out. If there's like a weapon that you think is cool from even a halfway popular game, they might have made it. They also get paid tons of money.
Like the Keyblade?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they also get paid tons and tons of money to do this, and like with Gorehowl, he was like, oh yeah, this is going to be a little bit challenging because he can't just use an entire hunk of steel to make the head because it would have weighed too much. So he enjoys the challenge of making new weapons.
Right. Does this show kind of run like American Chopper, or like the Warcraft Choppers experience? Did it come off in the same kind of way? Kind of just like.
No, not at all. It was only one episode instead of the, 14 or whatever ridiculous episodes they did for Azeroth Choppers. And also, it wasn't, gimmicky or joking or anything like that. It was definitely more of a Man-at-Arms episode than it was anything for Blizzard. Blizzard just gave it a name. There's a dude there from Blizzard that was like, yeah, this is what we want. This is what we want to make. And he talked to the dude a little bit, and he's like, all right. And then they just go into normal Man-at-Arms stuff about, actually making the weapon.
Right, yeah.
So definitely check it out. Definitely watch it. It's really cool just because blacksmithing, 800 years ago was just something that, it's like, oh, I'm a blacksmith. Oh, cool. Nowadays, it's like, you're a blacksmith? That's friggin' awesome,
Exactly, right. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's really cool to see players and fan replicas for cosplay and things like that, but seeing it made with actual steel so that it's actually sharp and actually hacks apart pieces of meat is almost too good to be true.
Yeah, right.
So I look forward to looking at that too.
Well, and the things that you're just like, there's no way in heck anyone can make that. Like Sephiroth's sword from Final Fantasy VII, or the Buster Blade Cloud sword from Final Fantasy VII. It's one's like an 8-foot long katana, and the other one is 3 feet wide and 6 feet long. This giant cleaver thing. It's like, nah, nobody can make that. And they're like, oh yeah, we can make it. Check this out. And then they're like, now we're gonna use it. Allow me to just chop this entire door in half. Anyway.
That's really funny.
It's very manly.
And you're going to need something manly to make up for our next topic.
Yeah, right? Grab the whiskey, because we're going to go into Noblegarden. Otherwise, Warcraft's version of Easter, which I have not done anything for, and I still have that stupid resolution. I'm going to do what a long straight trip it's been. So it starts Monday, April 6th. So the day that you're probably listening to this, it probably started today. And your entire job is to hunt eggs. That is pretty much the extent of everything that this holiday has. Have either of you done anything for Noblegarden? In the past. Obviously, you can't have done it yet.
I will just be totally honest here and say I have never done anything for any Noblegarden ever, because it is. I generally don't care about holiday events, but this is the one that by far I care about least.
It's probably the worst.
Yeah, I think that is a fair and accurate assessment.
Well, and also, like, it's not celebrating Easter in the same way that people who praise zombie Jesus celebrate Easter, you know, like going to church, a bunch of happy times and stuff like that. It's literally like a copy of department stores Easter. It's like, buy a bunch of eggs, open the eggs, eat the chocolate. You must eat the chocolate to get the achievement. Now go look for more eggs. There's even an achievement, like, you have to get, like, these spring flowers as one of the achievements. And if you shake them over top of females, they'll dance, and you have to get every female of every race. And the achievement is like, shake your bunny maker or something like that. It's terrible.
Oh, no way.
This is such a terrible holiday. Like, the one that's coming up next in a couple of weeks is Children's Week, which we'll see if I am able to complete that or not. It's notorious for not being able to be finished because of stupid PvP requirements. Regardless, though, this one is, like, one of the silliest. So, there's a couple things you can get. You can get a companion, a battle pet, and a non-battle pet. There's another one of those stupid, ugly, plucked ostriches that you can get mounts as. I mean, the Swift Love Strider looks exactly like the one that comes for Noblegarden. They're both the ugly.
You know, if they wanted a spring chicken kind of thing, I don't understand why they wouldn't use just a Hawk Strider model. I can understand why they wouldn't use the chicken mount, the magic egg, whatever.
Sure.
Because it's really still pretty exclusive and all, but like a Hawk Strider is more of a bird than a plain strider.
Yeah. So
it's like two-legged lizard thing.
Mm-hmm. We'll see how that
Shake
goes.
your bunny maker.
I don't know if that's actually true, or if that's the actual verbiage or not. But
that is. I'm looking at it right now.
Oh man, I was right. Yeah. See, this holiday is terrible.
Hey, I'm disappointed in Blizzard, but for the sexism, you know. But at least for the blushing bride achievement, if you kiss somebody wearing an elegant dress while wearing a white tuxedo shirt and black tuxedo pants, it does not specify gender.
Sure.
So that's very progressive of Blizzard. Hats off to you.
The one good, like, in terms of your game, the one cool thing that you can get from this is if you do all of the achievements, because it comes with a pretty sweet title, The Noble. It's pretty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic title. It's like, oh man, I could wear that one. That one's a good title.
Yeah, I suppose if you can get past people who see it thinking, oh yeah, the thing with the bunnies, that's cool.
Right. In terms of just the words, it's good words.
Hey, now that I'm on the achievements panel, we can have a little bit of a pop quiz. I'll pose a question to Florian. There are 5 locations that are labeled as deserts where you use your spring robes to plant a flower for this achievement. And they are all in Old World, Azeroth, Kalimdor, and the Eastern Kingdoms. Can you name them all, Florian? All 5.
5 deserts in
Desert
Kalimdor
zones.
East.
Can I
Desert
help?
zones.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Well, we know Desolus, right?
Well, see, here's the thing. I remember which ones are desert zones and which ones aren't. The problem is I don't remember which ones are in Eastern Kingdoms and which ones are
No. I'm just talking about not Outlands, not Pandaria, just Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms combined.
Oh, Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms. Okay,
right.
Just Kalimdor.
Trying to make it more specific.
Okay, so there's Desolus. I don't know if the Barrens would really count as a desert. It's got some vegetation, so I'm going to say probably not.
Silithus?
There's definitely Silithus. There's what's it called? There's that. It's the thing just to the west of Thousand Needles. I don't know if it counts as a separate zone,
the Barrens?
or if it's part of Thousand Needles. No, it's almost like a dried up lake bed. I would definitely say that's a desert. I don't know if it's part of the achievement or not.
Well, Thousand Needles is listed here, despite the inundating rains and the flooding.
It used to be one, so is the Blasted Lands on there?
The Blasted Lands is definitely a desert.
It says the Badlands.
Oh, sure, the Badlands. Okay, well...
Oh, yeah.
But it is Blasted Lands. That's strange.
No, there's the Badlands and the Blasted Lands.
No, they're two different areas.
Yeah. Oh, the Badlands is where Uldaman is.
Yeah, where Uldaman's at.
It's also where you can see where, like, Deathwing rolled over.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's got his giant, like, spine marks on the back of it.
Oh, fun. Oh, anyway, there's one more listed here.
It's not Uldum, right? Is it Uldum?
Wait, hold on. No, we have Desolus,
Silithus, Thousand Needles,
Silithus.
Badlands.
Oh, there's one more. It's obviously a desert.
Is it Uldum?
No, but close.
But Tanaris.
That's it.
Okay.
Cool. Nice job. So yeah, the Blasted Lands is like pretty desertified. I would say definitely.
Maybe it's because it's less of a desert and more of just a blown apart landscape.
Right, but Desolus doesn't really have any sand to speak of.
Well, you don't have to have sand to be a desert. You know, Antarctica is technically a desert just because there's not enough rainfall.
Ooh. That's a good point.
Yeah, the only standard is just very little rain. If you can hit that, you're a desert.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, good job with your geography there. Yeah, if we were to expand it into the current zones, we would still probably count probably Hellfire Peninsula, I would think, and definitely Uldum, which is a quintessential movie desert. And then I suppose that'd be about it. There's any desert in Pandaria, nor in Draenor itself. I don't think.
No, I mean the closest would be Spires of Iraq, but they still have plenty of vegetation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's definitely. Yeah, it seems about it.
Yeah, the Blizzard got the sand out of their pants in the first two expansions. Yeah. Make it a little interesting, maybe.
All right. Well, anyway.
Yeah, but that's Noblegarden, basically. Yeah. I mean, good luck. Have fun doing the Noblegarden achievements, Michael.
You know what? It might be less monotonous than the Lunar Festival and flying to every single place that exists in the game.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there are that many achievements to worry about. You have to go to a couple geographic locations and do a random thing, but honestly, unless you have to run to or as a creator as a bunny the whole time, I mean, that'd be a little tiresome.
The larger thing with Noblegarden is that there's, like, you need a lot of the eggs to get the chocolate, which is, you have to eat like 100 of them for one of the achievements, and then if you want any of the stuff, which if I'm doing it, I might as well get all the rewards from it, so I never have to do it again. There's only a few places you can actually get the eggs, and there's lots of people that are
hunting them.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the problem, is just getting all of the eggs. It can be very tedious and time-consuming to just sit there and wait for more eggs.
Well, damn, I'd flex that Alaska time zone muscle for one, and then two, you'll be happy to know that the chocolate lover achievement is only 25 chocolates.
No, there's two parts of it. There's 25, and then there's another one for 100, and you have to get the 100 to actually get the meta achievement.
Are you sure? Wow, I don't see that anywhere. Oh, maybe it unlocks after I've already done the 25 one. Kind of like those tiered achievements do. Okay, gotcha.
That would be correct.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Sorry.
Yep, me too. All right, we got one more thing in the news.
Wonderful.
something you're doing? Grant me your strength. No time for play. Me busy. Leave me alone. Animality. Me not that kind of orc. Wait. Ha. No. I will wield your strength.
Flap, flap, flap.
Are you alright, Evan?
I'll be okay.
Okay. you might stop laughing by the time we get done with the giveaway. So, we announced it last week, and it's still continuing on. We are giving away an Iron Skyreaver. So if you'd like this, very unique, awesome armored Rylak mount that's equipped with rockets, there are several ways you can enter. There's a link in the show notes, and there should be a link at wherever you are viewing this at, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. There should be a link to the giveaway on this episode post. It's being conducted through Rafflecopter. You have several options to get multiple entries, and there's several entries you can do multiple times a day. And you're more than welcome to do them. And then it is going to be on April 26th. We will announce the winner, and I wish you all tons and tons of luck. You guys have anything that you would like to add onto the giveaway?
The rockets aren't usable. You can't blow anything up.
Yeah, they don't give boosts, unfortunately.
Except through pretend and roleplay.
Dude, that would be awesome if it gave you an extra button that was a booster.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that'd be really cool. Or a little button that gave you little fireworks that you could shoot out of them anyway.
Blizzard needs to get more creative with their mounts.
Right, let's go.
This sounds dangerously close to going back towards Wrath of the King style vehicles. I don't know how I feel about that.
You would love it. Don't try to.
We'll see.
Alright, anyway, let's go into a closer look. Good luck, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to A Closer Look, everybody. Every week, we just taking a little bit of a closer conversation and gander at something that exists within the game. It's very rarely newsworthy, it's just something that we feel should be given a little bit more thought. We had a little bit of a discussion last week involving what pushes us to raid. Whether it is, the challenge of downing a new boss, or if it's really just, about trying to get some more loot. You want more gear, you want that item level to be higher. And what drives us to it, and if the loot system and raiding is something that we really think is still fitting. And so that's where we're going to be touching on in a closer look today. Evan, did you have anything that you wanted to follow up on before we get too far into it on the conversation we had last week?
No, just to summarize a little bit, I was trying to draw this kind of fine line between what part of the raiding kind of drive is, focused on getting that next boss kill, or is it about getting that next upgrade? And what drives people, and if it's a combination of to what degree do those two things kind of influence a person.
And I said that it was all about the loot, and he said it was about the challenge. But I retorted with, you wouldn't do it, challenge or not, if it wasn't for some sort of reward. And then we were like, we'll save this conversation for another time, which is this week.
It's a big conversation, right?
Yeah, because it does go back and forth on, really what it is. Because if any of us have raided, you have had that moment of, barely getting that boss kill or finally killing that boss that you feel like you've been working on forever. And, there's the nerd screams and you get all excited and you're shouting. Maybe for some people, I like to shout. I get really excited, especially depending on, what we're fighting or what happens. I will admit I shouted when Garrosh finally dropped my staff heirloom, because it was getting closer to Warlords and I was starting to get worried I wouldn't get it. And so when he finally dropped it, I was like,
Hogger is...
What?
Downing Hogger is worth shouting, depending on how close you came to dying,
Well, it's not really something that's a thing anymore. It definitely used to be, but I mean, really, you can just solo Hogger at level 3 now. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but it definitely feels that way, just with the way that the power creep and everything has changed around regarding us at low levels.
Well, just because you're playing low-level dungeons or leveling at any level, it doesn't mean that your PvE experience is completely devoid of any kind of significant achievement.
Nope, completely soulless over here, don't care. But, so, the first question that I wanted to pose to both our listeners as well as to both of you is, why do we raid? It's always considered to be the ultimate end game of Warcraft. It's raiding, that's one of the things that you do. It's like, so I'm high level now, I've got some gear, I can get into raids, take down these bosses, yeah! But, is that really why we do it? Do we raid for loot, or do we raid to kill bosses? Or are we only killing bosses for loot? There's this... And there's also the circle of, I need loot to kill bosses, and I want to kill bosses to get loot. But at what point is this circle actually created, or where are we stepping in on the first steps? So, for a lot of people, you can say it's the challenge. But then after the first kill, is that challenge still there? Or are you only going back now to get the loot? So I'll just leave that open in the air for the time being. What do you guys think?
Well, the first kill on a boss that you do with your raid group at the difficulty you're working on is a pretty significant, kind of milestone, especially if it's kind of a progression kill. And those are required in order to move forward because of the loot they give and because of the kind of technique and skill you develop while fighting that boss, and let you take them on at a harder difficulty afterwards. And once you complete the hardest boss and the hardest difficulty, then you get the loot in order to kind of prepare you for the next challenge ahead. And the thing about WoW raiding is that there's always a next bad guy coming. And
there will always be someone else.
Which is why it's kind of the quintessential argument people have when they find out you play online games. Like, oh, you've played it for 10 years and you haven't beat it yet? Kind of,
Sure.
I feel like that crops up a lot, at least more so in the past. People might understand online games a little bit more these days. But, yeah, it's hard to say that you do it for the challenge because... the challenges never stop coming, so you don't never kind of meet any goal unless you set it for yourself. And it's hard to say you're doing it for the loot because it's really just like a means to an end. It's hard to have a loot goal that you'll be satisfied with and close your account on. That doesn't really make very much sense.
Well, a lot of people, I feel, do have a loot goal of sorts because, at a certain point, some of us, sure, we continue raiding regardless of, we'll hit, Mythic Warforged or hit a high enough attainable level for what we consider our skill to be. And then after that, we either grab a different tune or we just kind of drift away from raiding for a time. Because, at a certain, you can only do something so many times before you're approaching the levels of insanity. So... I wouldn't say that people don't have, they may not have established loot goals, like, I will stop raiding when I hit item level 670. It's more of that everyone has this own, personal mental point where they're just like, okay, I think I'm done now.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like a never-ending TV show. You have to stop watching eventually, or else there will always be something on.
Right. And God bless the people that have watched the same soap opera for so long. I enjoy closure. And Warcraft does give you closure. It's like, okay, this arc is done. This raid is done. This expansion is done. So now we're going to start a new story. It's kind of like, a whole new book each time.
Right.
So at least it does give us that.
Yeah, a little bit of pause, almost like a kind of season. If you consider expansions to be kind of storyline seasons.
Right.
Warcraft to be the series. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And then, of course, when you finally downed Garrosh in Siege of Orkmar, I don't imagine you ever downed him on Mythic, quote-unquote.
Well,
or did you have that opportunity, Mike?
I did nothing at Mythic. I did do things in what Mythic used to be, which was Heroic. And got all the way up to Siegecrafter. And Siegecrafter was like the boogeyman. Mythic Siege of Orgrimmar, and he completely trounced me every single time. And I guess him, the Paragons of the Calaxy, and Garrosh on Mythic are just like, don't do it, you're gonna be sad.
Right. It's like almost a masochism.
Right, and so I didn't get to even attempt him on Mythic, but I did get to do tons of Mythic/Heroic, since that was, right where the difficulty changed. And I'll say for me personally, I loved it. It was great, but I never got the satisfaction to killing him on Mythic. I did get to kill him on Normal, what became Heroic, which for a lot of people was a very large hurdle. I mean, there's people selling the kills for ahead of the curve so you could get the mount. And I was very fortunate enough to fight my way into that on my own. And it was extremely satisfying even on Normal. I can't imagine what the Heroic kill would be like. Especially because, he takes you to that other dimension and all that other kind of stuff. But
right.
The thing is that after that, coming back to the conversation in terms of loot and raiding, the thing that made me want to go back and kill Garrosh again was that he dropped those heirlooms. I was wanting to kill him as much as I could on as many tunes as I could because I wanted all of them. And for me at the time, my main was a shaman, so his big ticket item, the Tusks of Manoroth, I didn't care about. But I could see whereas a warrior or any plate where those are really cool, where that could drive them to go get lots of Garrosh kills. But there were some bosses, that once I had gotten the loot I needed from them, I had zero reason to do them again. And I never even wanted to do them again. And that's where I get into this argument of that raiding is just completely about getting the drops from them. You get the satisfaction of killing them once. But if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't survive. And I don't know if I would even have the drive to go kill them even the first time if it wasn't for some form of reward past self-satisfaction.
Well, there's always a small reward. There's always a chance for an upgrade. There's achievements that you could do. There's special kinds of kills. I think, from my experience, the first, initial rush you get is when you kill them for the first time. And then, subsequently, I think, afterwards, you go for the one-shot, which is the next kind of, achievement tier, I think. Once you have a boss that you can one-shot, that's 100 times better than being able to kill them at all, because it could be sloppy and messy, and it could take 10 wipes in order to do it, and it's fun when you get it, but that second week and you come back to them and you wipe all night, that's not as fun.
Well,
so
yeah.
You say you kill them once and then that's it. You've done the challenge. I don't think that's exactly the whole picture.
I would say it is. Because, think about if you've played, I'm trying to think of good examples of, almost action RPG games. So think about, maybe, Devil May Cry, God of War, or, even, regular RPG, turn-based RPG, so, any of the Final Fantasies or anything like that. If you kill a boss, and, it was a really tough boss, you're like, yeah, I beat him! Screw you! Who's your master now? And then you move on with the story. And those games have zero reason for you to go back and do them again. Even if they could still offer you that same challenge because the boss is difficult, you would have no reason to go back and do them because there is no reward. So, even if your first defeat of them was just, oh man, he got me down to my last character, I almost died, but I just barely managed to eke it out. It's you get that satisfaction of defeating him, and then you're done.
Right, and I definitely understand that when it comes to a one-player game, but in a multiplayer game like this, and you're on a 10-man team or in a 15-man pickup group, and you guys down him, you could have died 30 seconds in. Would you still get the same satisfaction?
Maybe. I don't know. But the reason, but on that same conversation, though, it doesn't matter because I want to go back to get more loot. Right. Whereas, if my main character dies in a different game and we just move on from there, I wouldn't care because we're just moving on. Imagine
because part of the...
Go ahead.
Yeah, part of the boss kill is just unlocking the next kind of story component. And once you've moved on from it, there's no satisfaction in going back and trying the same challenge again.
Right, and now, like, imagine if a raid in Warcraft, each boss gave you some gold, maybe a special item, and then after that you could just, if you just extend the lockout, you can just skip them and move on. So, if you just kept moving on, and then once you were done, because, there was no point in going back to do them over for, if it wasn't for the loot that they had, you wouldn't go back. Sure, I could probably see doing the challenge the first time, but if it wasn't for them having loot tables, I would never go back to do bosses over again, unless they had a mechanic that I extremely enjoyed. And that's just because I'm wanting to play that mechanic again.
So that's why you go and farm chess boss and Karazhan every week?
No, I don't. I most definitely do not.
But I understand what you're saying, and honestly, reflecting on your points led me to kind of believe that rather than going just for the loot, or rather than going just for the achievement of killing the boss, not the literal WoW achievement, but for the sense of achievement, I'm thinking that the best satisfaction I get from making a boss kill is getting the upgrade that is big enough that it's worth the effort that I expended in order to get it. Like that feeling of earning the loot that's hard, great loot, hard to get, really great, big upgrade, and then feeling like I, kind of worked really hard and persisted through that, wiping pug, or really dialed down my focus and got that boss mechanic right, which led to the victory. And then that sense of satisfaction kind of failing a little bit after you have the upgrades, and you already have all the pieces you need from this boss, so the reward you get out of it isn't exactly worth the time it takes to do it anymore, unless you're extremely altruistic and you have guild members that you're getting upgrades for, and you kind of experience that satisfaction through helping them. That of course applies to some people, and to me to a smaller degree too, but the big sense of satisfaction is getting the reward that's in line with the effort, and that's why farming content gets a little tiresome for me.
But pulling on a conversation that we had earlier, you said that your drive now to even kill Blackhand in general has gone down, but that's a challenge that you haven't completed yet. You haven't taken that down. Why is it that hurdle is less appealing for you to conquer now?
Well, hold on. That conversation was off the record. All right. I'm joking. No, yeah, it's kind of got the Imperator syndrome going on, whereby the normal difficulty Black Hand is a lot harder than some of the easier difficulties in Heroic. So right now at this point, I could probably manage it, but it would be a whole lot of wiping in pugs, and a lot of pugs falling apart before they're really going to be able to tackle it pretty securely. And I didn't even kill Heroic Imperator until I was, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 bosses into normal Black Rock Foundry. I mean, that it was kind of like late in the game to start thinking about that kind of thing. If that was my drive from the beginning. So I think it still does factor into this kind of reward versus effort. Right now, the effort of killing Black Hand, even on normal, is kind of exorbitant compared to all the other bosses on the same difficulty. And the same goes for Heroic, that any reward I could possibly get out of it, which would be, I'll think differently when that's the only thing in the way of me doing my next legendary ring upgrade, but I still have most of a tablet to go, and then my priorities will shift a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, it just seems like way too much of a nightmare.
And any idea?
So maybe wait until
No, go ahead.
Just wait until maybe the pug community in general gets a little bit higher. Item level, a little bit more experience. And then I'll just try to steadily work on my item level until I can make that 690 group, for example.
Sure. Until you can make it where it doesn't matter anymore?
Well, no, not until I make it completely trivial. I mean, I could probably do my job all right with a few repetitions. And then it's just a matter of being able to execute as a group, and that kind of group confidence isn't necessarily there anymore. Or yet, at least.
Okay. So what do you think, Florian? Me and Evan have been going back and forth, and you're sitting over there quite quietly like you like to do from time to time. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, it's really a complex issue of whether you have people raiding to get loot or just raiding for satisfaction using the loot to get the kills. I definitely think that loot is going to be one of the primary motivations for anyone to raid, whether or not they like to admit it. The simple fact is that Warcraft as a game is built around grinding up levels. At first you grind up character levels, then you grind up gear levels. Like, that's the whole design of the game. So obviously that's going to be somebody's, well, pretty much everyone's focus, at least to some degree. I do understand Evan's other point, though, about the satisfaction of not just killing a boss, but going back to that boss and fighting him and getting better at it until you can one-shot him. The satisfaction of not just winning against him, but mastering that boss and mastering his mechanics. It's kind of similar to people who spend many years mastering other skills. Like, for example, somebody who spends a lot of years doing, say, marksmanship to get better and better at it. They're not doing any new content. They're still just shooting at a non-moving target, but they're getting the satisfaction of mastering something that they're doing over and over again. And I think that definitely plays into a big part of the reason for why a lot of the people in the raiding community raid. I don't necessarily want to speak for them because I'm not a hardcore raider, but when I look at the way that they approach raiding, especially your top-tier mythic raiders, I very much get the same kind of feeling as I do from people who are spending time mastering skills. It's a question of mastering the instance, mastering the bosses, getting to the point where you can easily one-shot them and have them on just complete farm status. So I think that plays into it just as much as the gear as a motivation for raiding.
Right. In a lot of my boss kills, there's always something I could have done better, you know, especially when I'm still learning the fight. And then Heimal these days, I mean, geez, I could do brackets with my eyes closed, and that's satisfying compared to how damn difficult it was when I started.
Why is that satisfying? Just because you're beating something very easily now that didn't used to be easy?
Exactly. I mean, sure, you have a little bit of a better gear score to kind of compensate, but honestly, I mean, that's almost as visible a progression in gameplay as an item level is a number on your character panel. I mean, honestly, when you have something that was super difficult and now is kind of second nature through repetition, hard work, and research and teamwork, I think that's a pretty good feeling to have, and one of the stronger allures of team raiding, especially with a consistent team that you play with every week or every other week or so.
Okay, so my next question on this then is actually geared towards the loot system itself. And because the loot system hasn't been changed in ever. It's still the same as it was 10 years ago, right?
Well, the tokens are a big thing that has changed.
Oh, you mean the tier pieces?
Right, rather than them. I mean, but that's like, yeah, that's not an enormous change. That's just more of a kind of small little optimization.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine.
Leapfrog your point, though.
No, that's perfectly fine. So the thing is, though, is that the loot system in essence hasn't changed, like, this entire time. It's still the same that it's always been. Now,
right.
Does it need updated? Does this loot system that we operate on, is it antiquated? I mean, it's one of the few things that hasn't ever been progressed on at this point in time. It's still the same as it was forever ago. I mean, because, you know, people will do the same thing over and over and over again in Diablo. I know, I'm guilty of it, because of just this spam of gear that is available to you. I mean, you know, legendaries dropping all over the place, and you get excited. You're like, you even know that it's probably going to be a piece of crap, but you still get excited because it has the chance to not be. But there's so many times in Warcraft that I'm just so disinterested from a boss because either I already have the loot, or the loot's just not exciting, or it can go into a whole bunch of different directions on why or why not that boss and loot may just be completely bleh for me.
Right, and then there are bosses that you are excited about killing even though they don't drop any loot for you, because guess what? The next boss after that one does drop loot for you, and if you make it to this boss, it's one step closer to a chance at the item you need.
But
which is actually more motivating.
Boss, I just want to skip it.
Right, exactly. But you can't. You're in a group and you want to kill Korog, and they're on twins, and that's the best shot you got.
Sad day. But do you feel the system though needs updated, or does it still feel suitable for you?
Jeez, that's a pretty tough question. I know Florian's got some strong opinions. Do you have those kind of collected?
Yeah, I do have some strong opinions on loot. That's very true. But I don't think I've ever met anyone who didn't have strong opinions on loot. Usually with the opinion being that they should have more of it. There are some refinements that could be made. Like in general, I think WoW has a good loot system for an MMO. The main things you need in an MMO where the primary endgame is raiding, and you get most of your gear through raiding, is you need to be able to consistently tell where you can get what loot, which you can do in WoW because every boss has a drop table. You need some kind of a mechanic that helps mitigate RNG, which historically has been tokens, like Justice Points or Valor Points, because even if you didn't get a drop you need, at least you got some points out of it, and you can eventually use that to buy an item. And they've done a pretty good job with these things in general. Not so much with the Apexis gear right now, but that's a whole different discussion. So, yeah, they've generally got a good system going. The problem is there are some small issues with the way they're setting up loot. One thing in particular with Warlords of Draenor recently is the fact that they've added a lot more randomization to items, which has resulted in a lot of cases. I know in several occasions where I have picked up an item that is an upgrade for something else I have, sometimes by a 10, 15 item level upgrade in theory, but because the random secondary stats on it are garbage, it ends up being a downgrade if I actually equip it, so I don't get it. I know there was a lot of randomization in early WoW because a lot of the loot systems were inspired by Diablo, but randomization doesn't really work on MMO gear, and it's one of the things that should probably be the first to go. Because as I said before, if you're going to invest a lot of time into getting the gear, and raiding is definitely an investment of a lot of time, and same thing for dungeons and crafting, then you should at least have some guarantee of what you're going to get, which you don't get with these randomized stats. They just don't belong, in my opinion, in an MMO.
Right. And I think a system that was more kind of deliberate in what you're going to get out of it, rather than relying on random number generators, it could also like open up the possibilities of having loot and equipment in general make a little bit more sense in the context of the kind of fantasy world that we're playing in. One thing I want to bring up, because we were talking about loot, is how boots fit on Tauren and trolls versus humans and blood elves, and how it could be said that you have tailors and things making this kind of one-size-fits-all boot, and the severe alterations it has to undergo in order to be able to fit on a Tauren's foot, So instead of going off and saying, all right, go kill Blackhand, and Blackhand drops a sweet pair of boots, well, he didn't have Tauren-sized hoof cuffs on him, I'm sure, especially because his blood elf is fighting before them. Wouldn't it make a little bit more sense if you had somebody send you on this mission to go kill Blackhand and steal his forge gem? I'm making that up. And then bring it back, and I'll use this forge gem to forge you a pair of boots that actually fit.
No. The reason that I say that is because, well, before Warcraft, for me, there was Dungeons and Dragons, and magical items in Dungeons and Dragons are magically enchanted just innately to change their size and shape to fit anything that wants to wear them.
Is that right?
Yes.
Missed that part in the rulebook.
I don't know if it's expressly states that in the rulebook. I just know that is how it works.
All right, I can suspend my disbelief a little bit about that, but then, yeah, I guess that would still kind of allow for plate being plate and cloth being cloth and never the twain shall meet kind of thing. Because I guess you could make magical gear that changes size and shape, that can't change its material composition, I suppose. Right? Is that where you're getting at?
Right. It just changes size, and so that you can fit into it if you are something that if it's like elven boots of stamina or whatever.
Right.
It changes. It's like it was originally made for an elf, but it will change so that the orc player can wear them.
Right. It just aside from the boots changing size kind of thing, it would also make a little bit more sense if we went in and killed Orgorger, this big rock monster, and it didn't drop all sorts of shiny staves and leather jerkins and plate bracers and leather boots.
Sure, like the only thing Black Hand should really drop is the Black Hand.
Right.
Which, if this wasn't an MMO and was, a more traditional RPG, that is what he would drop. Maybe some sort of magical ring or something like that, but...
Right. Who knows what he's wearing underneath on his fingers.
Sure.
Drop that stuff. Or, just hack him up and take his teeth kind of thing. I mean, something... I'm always, kind of pandering for more realism in my fantasy online game where I play a giant bull creature.
Chop off his teeth. Noted, Evan the Psycho.
No, I mean, what else are you going to take off him? I mean, you killed the most powerful siege guy, blacksmith guy in the whole planet. But he's going to take his weird hand thing and just leave the rest of them. I don't know.
So
somebody's going to want Black Hand's teeth.
Those times where we have a discussion and it starts winding down and we realize we haven't accomplished anything at all in terms of the original discussion? It's kind of where we're sitting right now.
Apologies, no, I thought we were talking about loot.
It technically was. You are not wrong.
Alright, well, back on track then, eh?
I just feel like the system works. I just think that it could use some sprucing up. Because it does suck when, if Blizzard wants us to keep playing... and they don't want to have to, spam crappy content or just spam content in general, then wouldn't the easiest thing to do is give us more incentive to play? If they want us to play what they've already made and what, is supposed to be current, then the loot system as it stands needs just a little bit of work, because you do get to that point of, it's like, well, the only, it's like, I don't need to do any of these bosses, I just need this one for my, best in slot trinket.
Mm-hmm. Which, on this whole topic of how does Blizzard incentivize us to keep running content, especially if it's getting a little bit stale, I think the only example you really need to look at is Siege of Orgrimmar and Garrosh. The progression of the heirloom drop chance and the amount of change they put into that over the patches leading up to 6.1. Or 6.03, I guess.
Well, and also with Siege of Orgrimmar, I mean, I do not know a time that I can immediately think of that loot had been worse. Like, some of the most ridiculous trinkets and just god-amazing pieces were in Siege of Orgrimmar. Like, there are no pieces that exist right now in... I haven't taken a very close look at Blackrock, but I mean, I can think of a couple that I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be nice to have. But there were pieces in Siege of Orgrimmar that I wanted. I was like, that is amazing. Yeah, give it to me. Normally trinkets, sometimes weapons, a couple of different pieces of armor, but There's not any gear in any of these that I'm just like genuinely excited about. I'm just like, oh yeah, okay.
Right, and it's also go ahead. It's a first rate tier though, so maybe they're saving the big guns for the end of the season, so to speak.
Maybe. I mean, we're looking.
And so I'm sure you can't remember. Right, it's like remembering that really memorable trinket that you wanted from Mogashan Vaults.
There were trinkets and gear that was insanely good from Throne of Thunder, though.
Right.
Especially from Lei Shen. Lei Shen had some ridiculous gear. Incidentally, Garrosh, for the most part, had gear that I didn't care about on like any of my characters. I just wanted the heirlooms.
Exactly. And did he release with the ability to drop heirlooms, or did they add that in halfway through?
I have no idea.
I think he released with a small chance to drop heirlooms, and then the first iteration was they upped this kind of bad luck insurance, where the more times you kill them, the more likely you are to drop an heirloom if you haven't gotten one yet.
And it would be one for your spec as well.
Right, yeah. And then after that, even after making them that much easier to drop, they went and gave you a guaranteed drop on per character per difficulty.
Right.
And then I think people were coming out the woodwork to get these heirlooms. I mean, that was an incredible incentive as far as the result of how many Garrosh kills they got. And this is at the tail end of the expansion itself, after people were more sick of Siege of Morgawar than they have ever been sick of a dungeon, and they're coming out in droves to get these heirlooms anyway.
Oh yeah, Garrosh runs were easy. And then we got into the people of, I'll sell you a run for 5K, and we're going to bring 5 people in, and those people made buku money. But there is nothing like that currently. And so raiding, I feel so especially because I'm getting so much gear from things that aren't raiding, which isn't bad, but it's just killing my desire to raid.
What other things are you going to get from besides raiding?
You can get it from world bosses, which are much faster than raiding, by the way, because you just throw 40 people at it and it dies. You can get gear from the garrison invasions, from garrison world bosses, from the garrison missions. I mean, I have done very, very little raiding, and my priest is item level like 665. Which is, nice. What, normal Blackrock?
Right.
And I have killed 1 Blackrock boss on normal. I've only downed 1. And I have only killed 2 bosses on High Mall Heroic, which is also the equivalent of Blackrock normal. So, for me, I mean, like, raiding for me is just feeling less and less like an incentive. Like, I might, take a night and just jump in there and blow through normal with a group if I can. And then I'll probably, hit the normal walls of, like, Iron Maiden's, Blast Furnace, Black Hand, and then I'll be like, okay, trot.
Right. And so you have the raiding gear, but you haven't done really very much raiding at all. Do you feel like are you satisfied?
No.
Or
I am not satisfied. I have played. It is really interesting because when Siege of Orgrimmar was around, I was playing a crap load of Warcraft, and Siege of Orgrimmar had already been out like a year, and I was still doing Siege of Orgrimmar. I was gearing up alts and throwing alts at Siege of Orgrimmar, not even because I wanted the heirlooms, just because the gear was good and the bosses were good and it was awesome. And I did that all the way up until like 6.0 dropped. And 6.0 dropped, and I did it just a little bit, and then I was just waiting for Warlords. Warlords is here, and we get there, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to get into Heimel, and I did some Heimel, and then I started getting gear from other places, and then I realized that I was like, I have no desire to do this. And like Blackrock came out, and I like jumped into a group, and we downed Hans and Franz, and then I just stopped caring already again. I'm like, man, I just don't care. And then I'm like, oh, check it out, awesome, my Blackrock Foundry cache is in my mission thing. Cool, it gave me a piece I needed.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I mean, like my desire, I haven't even had the satisfaction of downing those bosses the first time, and I have zero desire to go in there because I already have the loot.
Interesting. So I wonder if Blizzard kind of released a monster with all these alternative methods of gearing.
I kind of think they did.
So Florian, I know due to your connection concerns, you haven't stepped into the raids in force. But have you been able to get plenty of upgrades, or what?
Yeah, I've had pretty much no trouble, like, in terms of, like, if I wanted gear, aside from, like, mythic level stuff, I've had no trouble getting it. Like, world bosses are easily zergable, so no matter how bad my connection is, all I've just got to do is just keep slamming my face against them until they die.
Make sure you're there, make sure you hit them once.
Exactly. Then there's the High Mall missions and the Blackrock missions, which, I'll do all that stuff for you. You can never step foot into a raid and still have, like, at least entry-level, normal raid gear, a full set of it.
I don't have tier
I would
pieces,
say it's never been easier. Well, yeah, aside from tier pieces, but I think those should stay for the raiders only. If they start handing those out, then we are truly lost.
We're doomed.
It's a good point. So it's like raiding now. The only incentive is to get the tier pieces, and this is one of the things I was kind of disappointed about because I knew they were going to release the different kind of equipment models for the harder difficulties, and the one model is only reserved for Mythic, which is like the really cool, like the Night Elf or not Night Elf, the Druid bug armor. I mean, that's a big part of gear is how it looks and as like kind of a status symbol and everything. And on a populated server like Illidan or Tichondrius, I mean, I bet a lot of druids are walking around in the bug armor, honestly.
Well,
but on my tiny little server, we don't have like very much mythic progression at all.
Let me also touch base with you on one other thing that matters for this entire case of things. Another thing that I really loved doing was doing old content. Now, with the way that they changed gear, at level 90, nothing from Cataclysm was difficult, save for 25-man heroic. Anything besides 25-man heroic was very, very easy to solo. With the change, though, even with gear, soloing Miss Pandaria content is pretty much something you can't even consider. So that's another thing for me, of that even if I got like mythic gear, I still really wouldn't be able to solo the last expansion's content, which is depressing because I want to, but I can't. So like one of the things that like I was like, I have a Death Knight from Wrath, and I didn't do much with it in Cataclysm, and then I was like, man, I really want to go solo some hard heroic Cataclysm stuff. So I was like, I better gear this thing up, and I got some gear, and I got some good trinkets and stuff, and then I went and I was like, alright, challenge time, and it was like, working my way through soloing the last expansion's content. That is not really an option right now. And I don't know if I just need to wait for the next raid tier so that I can get more gear so that I'm a little bit higher equipped, but it's just not something that is like, and because of the way that they made the changes, that stuff hurts still. I can't solo it.
Yeah, and that might be the intention, honestly, that those rewards are still kind of gated by teamworks and grouping until the next expansion, honestly. Just for exclusivity's sake. I mean, how many people, how accessible right now is the Firelands tier gear? You can go buy it with gold. For like 2,000 gold, you can have the whole damn set right now.
Right.
Do you want the tier sets from Throne of Thunder and from Siege of Orgrimmar to be as ubiquitous? Or do you want them to still kind of have a little bit of value if you still got yours in the bank?
I don't agree with the prospect of buying the tier gear with gold, period. I will say that. It does not bother me, right, though, if the content was soloable and people wanted to go back and... Because, getting heroic Cataclysm gear before the stat squish was still an accomplishment. If you could just bring 3 people that didn't share tokens, and you could simplify it pretty well. But if you soloed it, it didn't matter because I had the self-satisfaction of I got this. After the stat squish, I mean, Firelands is like, woohoo!
Wait, so are you not able to queue for Siege of Orgrimmar looking for raid?
No.
And do the LFR content, or the LFR difficulty?
No. You can if you're level 90.
No, we went back and did LFR Dragon Soul just the other month. There's got to be some way to access that now.
Yeah, you can still access it. Sure, you can access it. You can go and talk. I believe you can talk to a panda that's sitting outside the door, and he'll queue you up for LFR. But it's by yourself. I mean, it's not like with a group. You could bring a group, but I'm speaking primarily on the prospect of soloing it.
You can't solo LFR Pandaria raids at all.
I don't know.
It's that difficult.
I haven't tried, but LFR is not the same as normal. I mean, the gear looks different. Maybe not in, the model-wise, but color-wise.
Oh, yeah, the coloring is going to be difficulty-based entirely. Yeah, exactly.
Right, and the color I want is actually from normal, which I can't do.
Oh. Well, damn.
And also, some of the bosses haven't even been tuned yet to be soloable. I mean, you cannot, Siege of Orgrimmar is a perfect example. You cannot solo Galacrest. You cannot solo, what's the other one that you can't solo? Just straight up can't. Oh, Shaw of Fear. Can't solo that.
No.
Just straight up can't. Whereas all of the other bosses in the past, some of them were not soloable, and they made changes to them to make them soloable. And Pandaria hasn't had that tuning pass yet. And that is not as much of a complaint, because, yes, it sucks, Blizzard, please get on that so that I don't get mind controlled. But the point is that a lot of the bosses, I just simply can't solo because they still friggin' hurt. And my gear isn't to the point yet of that it's just a really hard solo challenge. And also, I am not that ridiculous Death Knight that was soloing Garrosh at level 90. That's not me, okay? I'm a real player here and not some magical god of another land. Because that was insane.
It was really impressive.
Basically, I'm grumpy, okay? That's what I'm getting at.
I understand.
Here, is that
share your feelings.
Something is wrong, and I think it has to do with loot, and it needs fixed.
Well, damn. Let's see. The most satisfying loot system in the game, because there are a couple of different loot systems. You have quest rewards, you have professions, you have events and things like that, scenarios where a kind of loot system with this cache idea that came in from Pandaria and just kind of stuck around. Then you have stores that exchange tokens and things like timeless coins, in their day, and then reputation vendors. I think that the most satisfying loot system was probably reputation vendors, honestly. You didn't have to collect any tokens. Once you hit Revered or Exalted, you unlocked all of the rewards at that level, and you just had to shell out some kind of cursory currency in order to just get all the items, and you get them all one fell swoop, and you have a progress bar the entire time that you're constantly driving towards with little incremental boosts of progress there. And then once you make it, then you never have to touch the damn reputation again or do another daily quest in that faction ever again, and you have all the rewards right up front.
I agree. The thing that I disagree with is that normally those rewards from reputations cost ridiculous amounts of money, which I feel is a improper gate if I've already put the time into it. Now that you're saying this, one of the best systems that I can think of, I will say that I actually really enjoyed Valor points. I didn't like caps or the ways that you got them, but their concept I enjoyed. I wish that they would have not given you Valor points for things like scenarios and just given you more from raid bosses. But but you're making me think of the big awesome ring that you got from Icecrown Citadel. It had its own reputation, the Ashen Verdict, and at every tier of that reputation, you got this better ring. If there was a way to do that with more than just a single item, I think that would be a fantastic system. But that's so far in the past.
The same thing was in Karazhan.
Right.
But what since you consider downing the end boss as like pretty much a big achievement, how would you feel about going through Blackrock Foundry and dropping, little pieces of gear off all the bosses, and then the moment you kill kill Black End for the first time, bam, your entire tier set drops. You get access to the whole thing. There you go. You win. Would that feel hollow? Would that feel worthwhile? Would it depend on the difficulty of the encounter, or would that be satisfying and just?
I would be ridiculously excited. The only problem because my brain, thinks like this. The only thing about this is that means people are going to sell Blackhand kills, and that bothers me. But as for my own satisfaction, if I got to Blackhand and Blackhand just dropped, here's your awesome tier set, I would be stoked, and I would be throwing my face right now at Blackrock Foundry, instead of just having to hope that these bosses get pieces of tier that I get. And I hope it's the right piece or anything like that. If it was just like, if you get through this whole thing and you get to Black Hat in the end, boom, there you go. I'd just be like, I'm game, I'm down. Like, if that was true, I would be raiding. But I'm not.
I mean, what if we applied that to every boss? For example, you go in the Blackrock Foundry, Haunted Prawns is the boot boss, Gruul is the belt boss, Beast Lord Dalmak is the pants boss. And then it just, your boots, your pants are guaranteed to drop from that boss the first time you kill it.
Then I think we go into the concern of what's making me kill him again. See?
Right.
That's the problem, is coming back. Because Blizzard wants us to come back.
But would we come back if, without any other incentive to do so? Helping out a friend, or more likely, just selling the run like you're saying? People want the gear, I can carry them through the content. All they have to do is participate, hit the boss once, and then they get their, due.
I don't know.
So, I mean, I wouldn't think that was
You've given me a lot to chew on.
System. Right, no, it's just about, setting up little scenarios about teasing out the specifics of the problem and the question at large. What is the actual real base problem? Or can you even boil it down so much? I think it's almost impossible to. I think Blizzard constantly balancing a crazy amount of kind of factors, the reasons different people raid, and trying to appeal to everybody at once, which just requires constant fiddling. It's like the little Dutch boy in the dam. How do we close as many of these holes as possible so that people kind of stick with it in general, and they make decisions and it zones out some players, and the end goal is to keep the majority around and keep them playing and logging on. And I think the player base wants to be entertained, and they want to feel like they have something to work for, and I think they want to feel satisfied in meeting their kind of expectations. When people don't meet their expectations, they get frustrated and they quit. If something's too easy or way too hard, then it's not engaging, and that's an impossible balance to strike. I mean, for God's sake, Blizzard's got 4 different difficulties for all the same content. If that isn't accessible, then I don't know what else they could possibly do. But trying to say this is the quintessential WoW player's requirement to be satisfied with the given content is way too reductive. They have to appeal to a wide variety of temperaments and play styles and commitment levels and skill levels, and then trying to satisfy everybody, give everybody a satisfying gameplay experience, and that's not possible.
Right.
And I think it's even less possible to present one experience, one system that kind of capture everything, all of the above.
Okay. I have nothing more to say. How about you, Florian? Do you have any words before we move on?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything, at least everything that was in my thoughts.
Okay. All right. Let's go into the review. Welcome to the review, everybody. Every week we will review something, whether it is a 5-man dungeon, a raid, a class, a spec, a battleground, a zone, a quest line, a city. We will review something. This week we are going to be reviewing a 5-man dungeon, Deadmines. Deep beneath the mines of Moonbrook in southwest Westfall lie the Deadmines. Despite the demise of the Defias Brotherhood's leader, Edwin Van Cleef, at the hands of Alliance militiamen. What? That is not true. Anyway, the Deadmines...
Yeah, it was us. They gave us...
Yeah, right? Anyway, the Deadmines is still the Brotherhood's most secure hideout since Cataclysm. Here, the survivor of Edwin's crew toil alongside new recruits so that the Devious Juggernaut ship can be complete and the Kingdom of Stormwind can be brought to its knees. All this is happening under the vigilant eyes of Captain Cookie and Vanessa Van Cleef. We break the review section into 3 sections: ambience, gameplay, and lore. Ambience is everything you hear, see, and feel. Gameplay is the boss's mechanics, the loot, and the numbers, and lore is obviously the story behind it. Evan, would you like to step us into ambience, please?
Well, I was going to leave it to your Alliance guys to kick us off, but yeah.
I can take it if you want to take gameplay. That's perfectly fine.
No, actually, my very first level 60 character back in Classic was a gnome mage, so I started out on the dark side, and Deadmines was one of the first dungeons that I ever did. So, yeah, Deadmines is really cool. I mean, a lot of nostalgia there, absolutely. Very first instance ever walked through. Something's got to be said right off the bat about traveling to the instance portal itself, because it was a sore trial getting through that damn cavern with all those damn miners. Was a nightmare. And then being able to get back after you've died, and invariably your ghost is spawned at Sentinel Hill, not right outside the entrance, back in the days of yore. And then going through the caverns and having that be the kind of stage setter. So yeah, you get that it has a secret entrance, which I think is awesome, inside the top of the barn. And you drop down into these mine shafts. Very much kind of underground lair feel to it. And then going deeper and deeper and get a little bit of the sense of the operation. You have the peasant miners with these well-dressed kind of overseers and stuff. You got to watch out for them because they're really strong. And then you pop through the entrance portal, and all of a sudden you've got this kind of more of the same kind of thing. It out of the zone rather well, which I think a lot of dungeons don't really have that same kind of continuity. It's more of a sharp change. Think about the stockades. The outside is very much, Stormwind proper. And the moment you kind of go down the stairs 5 feet, you're in the instance portal. Now you're in a Dark Dank dungeon. It's completely different atmosphere. Deadmines has a little bit more of a smooth transition. Now, what I like about this dungeon is the kind of unworked stone in all the tunnels and everything. We have a lot of kind of naked stone dungeons, for example, Uldaman, Razorfen Downs, Crawl, and then you have ones that kind of switch between worked stone and rooms and stairways and stuff, with kind of naked rock in between, for example, Black Fathom Deeps and Deadmines like that. And I like how you have this rough hewn kind of tunnel, and yet you have these kind of like really worked smooth parts of it too, which makes me think, hey, was this an old structure that they were repurposing? Have they built this all from the ground up? And it's a little bit of mystery, in there. And then I like a lot of the environmental details. It used to be this old joke that these mines are spurting off, or these pipes in the mines are spurting off steam from a pressure release valve right in the middle of the pipe for some reason. And there's always kind of an Easter egg. Everybody used to talk about that. And then when they did all the changes, they put 2 NPCs that would stare at it and ask what it's for, drawing attention, putting a kind of a lampshade on it, it's called, in the business, I guess. So it's cool to have little tiny illusions like that, and have little dynamite packs that you can blow up, remotely, and all that sort of thing. And then the final kind of chamber is the dock itself, where the boat is. And as far as dungeons that are on boats, I mean, this is a pretty cool way to do it. You have a lot of scaffolding. It's the boat's in place; it's not moving anywhere, and it's in this big, giant kind of expansive opening, which is a big environment change from the inside of the tunnels.
It's very fantasy
which I think
trope.
is a pretty cool juxtaposition. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they really capture this feel almost to the letter. I mean, it's almost like Captain Hook, kind of Pirate Cove.
Yeah, hidden back away in the caverns is the pirate ship that everyone's always looking for, and it creeps out and takes out unfortunate merchant ships. Even though this actually has a much different purpose, it still has that same effect.
So yeah, just building up from the kind of Moonbrook itself is the starting point, and then going through these tunnels, and then you have this giant forge, and you have these lumber rooms, and then all of a sudden you have this cove. I mean, it's giant. It's really got kind of an epic feel. I mean, it's the biggest boat you've ever seen at that point, because the only boats you've seen around have been like little transport ships between Darkshore and Teldrassil kind of things, So this thing's at least 5 times the size as one of those things, and it's multiple levels, and you're climbing up and down, and there are parrots and squall shapers and kind of thing. Cool little swashbuckling pirate themed, trash. Honestly, some of the most imaginative of that generation of content. I think it's a pretty good package, honestly.
Well, and it's just like, it's one of those age-old dungeons. I mean, it's been around since the very beginning, and it's just got so much character in it. And even the changes that came, like, I feel like this is one of the very few cases in which I feel like it's so much better now than it was before. Compared to vanilla to after Cataclysm when it got remade. This dungeon is just fantastic. And just the essence of everything around it has just held up so well. And it gives you so much of the, like, I mean, we talked before of there's dungeons that is like, man, why am I doing this? Or, shouldn't someone, or, it's like a level 30 dungeon, you're taking down, like, a god that's creeping into this world, and you're like, man, this feels bigger than me. Whereas this dungeon, even at level 18-ish, right around when you're doing it, it is the perfect point of where everything just fits so well. It's like, this is a legitimate threat, but it's not, above my power level. This is something that I could see myself going to do. None of these bosses are outright over the top. It's like, some, ogre that has some magic, this dude who's good with machines, a big machine, and then, a werewolf and a rogue. These are, it's like, these are very realistic bosses for me to be taking on. Some might be a little bit more frightening than others, but they still feel within the scope of what my power should be, which I feel is so important in the ambience of all of this, because, there are some dungeons that you're just like, man, this is really heavy, in terms of what's happening in the game. And also, it's one of the few places that you can still find those cool old treasure chests. They used to be a big deal. You'd find treasure chests hiding in, like, barns and stuff like that. And there's still some of those that you can still find and spawn and stuff like that. And it's just, it's a neat feeling for the game. The music is, I don't know if it's still the original music. It is weak, though. Because it's very, very low tone, low key. And it's almost even hard to hear. What do you think, Florian?
The music was alright. I don't think it was the original, though. It somehow seems different. I'm not sure because it's been many, many years since the original Deadmines. Aside from the music, though, the rest of the place is pretty solid. This is actually one of my favorite dungeons in terms of design. The Deadmines, as the name implies, are mines, so you have a lot of tight mine shafts, but what they've done is They put you in a small mine shaft that winds around for a while. Then they put you in a big room for a boss fight. Small mine shaft, big room. And they kind of set up this sort of progression where every time you get into a slightly bigger room. And then in the end, you just get this massive pirate ship room that is just completely unexpected coming out of a tiny mine shaft. And that, I don't know what effect that had on other people, but it kind of blew my mind the first time I saw it back in the day. Because I really didn't see...
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because I really didn't see anything that large coming, even though they kind of set you up for it by giving you a series of progressively larger rooms, which I think was really well designed, the way they did that.
And it was particularly remarkable, the kind of event entrance into the final room with Mr. Smite and his classic dialogue.
We miss Mr. Smite.
We do. We do miss him. And with the door exploding, or I believe you could also open it silently without alarming Mr. Spite and causing the rush of NPCs.
You could do that. I think you had to have a rogue lockpick it or something like that.
Right. Or
I remember it being a thing you could do.
Right, as opposed to just using the ammo that you pick up from the ground, further up the tunnel in the cannon itself, which is a kind of environmental interaction that we don't really see very much anymore these days either. And I'm not entirely sure if you can still use it or if you just go up and right-click on the damn door these days, or on the cannon itself.
I'm not sure. I'm actually running through right now, but there is no cannon anymore that opens a door, so that's unfortunate.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, unless you're just able to open the door normally, but there wasn't even a cannon that I needed to use, so...
I'll have to go check that out.
But Florian's right, though. I mean, everything just keeps getting more and more epic. Like your journey is continuing on farther and farther and getting built up more. For a 5-man dungeon, its energy is fantastic. So then, What is your grade on ambience, Evan?
Oh man, the rosy nostalgia goggles are strong. I'm gonna give it an A+. Honestly, why not? This place took fantasy trope and executed it, I think, remarkably well. I think the ambience of the place even extends outside of the zone, which is, really a huge part of the kind of effect of it. It just ropes in almost the entirety of Southern Westfall, which I think is impressive. And that's going to bridge a little bit into lore as well, but I really don't think they've made any glaring mistakes at all in this thing, and I think everything they did really well, so that deserves an A+ from me.
Florian.
I have to agree with that assessment. Ambience-wise, this is one of my favorite dungeons. Everything Evan said, I agree with pretty much 100%, and I can't really argue with it. This place is very well designed, and it does exactly what it sets out to do with the whole piratey mine type theme. It's just awesome design all around.
And your grade?
Oh, I didn't give you a grade, did I?
No.
Oh, it's an A.
Just flat A?
Yeah, I'm kind of holding back on the plus for now.
Okay. I will be standing right next to Evan then, and giving it an A+. This is the kind of dungeon and the kind of everything around that just everything has been built and fit correctly. It's great. I mean, this is the kind of... I will admit to having done a D&D campaign that is going through Deadmines. Just make it a little bit bigger and make it a little bit longer, and you got it, and it's going to be great. Oh, I did find the cannon. You do still shoot the cannon. And the cannon is rigged with an explosive trap and blew me on my ass, and a whole bunch of NPCs just came out and attacked me.
No, I hope you survive.
I'm pretty sure I'll be okay. I think I can manage it. They're level 20. And it's the door to actually get outside. And you're right. I think you actually can still pick it. I don't know. I'm not on a rogue. I'm on a shaman. But it is incredibly well deserving of the grade that it gets, because everything in this is so fantastic. And the final cavern itself is so huge. and you got these, giant stalactites hanging from the ceiling. It's just great. The only thing that I could possibly give a small little mark against it is it has very weak music. But, I will just accept that. Being blown off of a thing by cannons instead of them just hurting me is just absolutely glorious. The difference in just that itself is so huge in terms of feeling this place out. We'll go ahead and go into gameplay now, and I'll take the first steps into gameplay for us. The gameplay in this place, you will not be able to really get the full feel of it if you're at lower level. Unfortunately, the strongest gameplay from this was because this was a Cataclysm Heroic, which I've mentioned in the past. So its strength was of that it was pretty darn difficult. And the gameplay in here is just, you can feel it amping up. In the beginning, you're just taking out a couple like goblin miners and some ogres, and then you get past the ogre mage, and just small things that aren't necessarily gimmicks, that are just very real, very immersion-filled things. Like they're enslaving monkeys to help them mine things, and if you free the monkeys will help you, and they'll throw bananas and stuff at the people that are enslaving them. That's cool. And, there's this big, giant robot, and that's cool, and, just everything just feels so good. And when you're on that heroic difficulty at the time, this was, like, the perfect challenge. Nothing in here felt impossible like some of the other dungeons. It was just very challenging, which was great. And you could jump in cannons and shoot cannons at, the people in the mine shaft, or jump in the cannons once you got to the boat, and instead of them shooting at, the thing where they were blowing you off the gangway and stuff, instead you could turn it around and shoot the NPCs with them, and really give you that little edge, kind of like, for those of you that remember the shoreline in Siege of Orgrimmar, you wanted to jump in the cannon. And just small little quality of life things, like, there's a teleporter when you first walk in, and once you've gotten to the boat, it'll teleport you all the way to the boat, so if you die, no big deal. You can get back quickly without having to waste your life away. As you go through the dungeon, it's like, oh man, I died to the final boss. Now I have to spend my 15 minutes corpse run. So you just get to proceed as normal, which is nice. You get to be reset easily. So as you go in here, just everything felt just the same as the ambience. Everything just has such a strong feel to it. There's even shortcuts that you wouldn't immediately think of, that you were able to get around certain trash, and the trash had unique abilities. There are zones that had more damage, it increased the damage, and you wanted to pull the mobs out of it and stand your ranged in it because they gave you an extra bonus. All of these things are great. And then we'll just get to the final bosses, and I don't consider Cookie a boss. The whole gimmick with the food actually wasn't that bad. It was very real. You wanted to eat the good food because it made you better. But the werewolf, the end, as well as Vanessa Van Cleef herself, were extremely good encounters. Him, because, he put this fog everywhere, and he was very difficult, and, it was like, I can't see the boss. Where's the boss? He's summoning these ads. Where are the ads? Oh, God. And it just added so much more to it. And then Vanessa, the boat's exploding. You grab the rope and fly off of the boat and come back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just all of this stuff. You're just like, man, this feels so epic for something that's so small. I mean, it gives you so much more life compared to fighting the boss in Old War that turns into the bridge. The guy with two hands and laser beams. You just dodge the laser beams, defeat the arms, and take him down, he turns into a bridge. Woohoo! Moving along. Whereas, everything in this keeps on building up higher and higher and lets you into the next area through these doors, and like Florian said, they get bigger, and everything just keeps getting bigger. And that's wonderful in terms of gameplay. And it was also neat to see them bring back the old loot. The old loot, it still had the same loot, it just was upgraded from previous. So it was neat that they didn't necessarily change the loot, because that is something that had happened in the past. It was like, man, I really wish I could still get Cookie Stirring Rod or whatever, and you still can, and that's just neat. So where do you guys like to take the steps from that?
Well, since you just talked about loot, let's talk about blackened Defias armor.
What about it?
Oh man, this is I'm not entirely sure if it's still available. Have you gotten any blackened Defias armor on your run there?
No.
This was kind of an anomaly in the old world. In between level 20 content and level 50 content, there was nothing really like these two armor sets. Them were the Fang of the Twilight and the Blackened Defias armor, and they're both for leather wearers. They both had set bonuses. One of them dropped exclusively in the Deadmines, and the Fang of the Twilight, I think was the name of that set, dropped in Wailing Caverns. And I think it was like a 5 or 6 piece set. Like, you had bonuses at 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, everything. And paired with the Defias mask, because there weren't many headpieces you could get at that level, at level 20 back in the day. It was like the quintessential rogue armor. I mean, everybody was after this stuff. And some of the pieces would drop BOE from the trash, and some of the pieces would drop from the specific bosses. I think the chest dropped from Van Cleef himself in the old iteration. And this was kind of an anomaly, because you didn't see any sets like this until your Dungeon Zero sets or the Postmaster sets. There was a weird set in UBRS called Iron Weave, which was a cloth set with a whole bunch of bonus armor on it and stamina. But, I mean, basically, I think this was one of the first kind of looks into loot that a lot of players got from a dungeon. And you have this badass matching set that gives you bonuses and more pieces of it you have. And I just want to call that out because that's a pretty significant part of the Deadmines gameplay back when it was relevant.
Sure.
So after having mentioned that, the gameplay in general for the whole place is pretty good. I like a lot of things you mentioned, especially more about the interactive environment. And then with the changes now, the Cataclysm kind of revamp, I think was it Vanessa Van Cleef?
Yes, Edwin Van Cleef's daughter.
One of the most kind of creative encounters I've ever seen, and she was only available in the heroic mode difficulty.
Correct.
And I think that I was going after Glory of the Hero at the time, Glory of the Cataclysm Hero for the Vitreous Stone Drake, if I'm not mistaken. And the achievement for this thing was, I believe, a timed run, either of the entire dungeon or just her fight itself, which made those little obstacles that she put you through during the kind of dream phase,
right? You had to
story,
get through the dream
things,
ridiculously quick.
Which the first part was all like, I guess, all the spiders in the big forge room, and then you had to go through this crazy electro trap thing, which is pretty unforgiving, honestly.
Oh god, it was so unforgiving.
Right? So, I mean, those are just things that were challenging without being frustrating, and I really enjoyed kind of going through and perfecting the skill to get through that encounter. And like you said, becoming Harrison Jones himself, action hero on the damn boat with the explosions and the rope swings. I mean, you gotta hand it to him. I mean, that's engaging gameplay that isn't
reflected in most other things
doesn't
anymore.
Really get old.
Yeah.
Right.
Where are you at, Florian?
I'm agreeing with a lot of you guys. A lot of what you guys have already said. Like, this place has some really solid gameplay overall. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned yet is the sequence when you are coming up to the ship on the docks after having blown open the door. And of course, I'm approaching this from a level 20 perspective. But for a player who's still a beginner and hasn't played the game that much, this is going to be probably his first exposure to having to avoid obstacles while doing something. Because if you walk down those platforms, you just run willy-nilly, you're going to get hit by one of those cannonballs. You get knocked in the water, and you have to swim back while your team wastes time sitting around. And we still have these kinds of things giving players trouble, even now in Warlords of Draenor. Like, I know that wind bit and Skyreach gets a lot of people. And
yeah.
Yeah, and this is the first example of that. The first example of a you need to pay attention to what you're doing and know when to move and when to stop. And I mostly remember that because I have fond memories of back in vanilla getting knocked off that platform and having to swim all the way back.
And you always get knocked off right at the end too. It's never in the beginning.
Yeah, it's never a convenient timing. No, that's definitely true. Another thing that's interesting, I don't know if this is more gameplay or maybe it kind of falls into ambience. This is, I think, the only instance that I can think of where there is actually an exit at the back of the instance rather than just an entrance. And the exit comes out in a completely different place than the entrance does. It almost makes it helps to make it feel like this is an actual place you went through. And not just a magical door that took you to another world where you fought some bosses and then just came back to Azeroth.
Sure.
So I think that was a really nice touch. It definitely helps the feel of the whole place.
So then... okay.
Yep.
What would you...
Yep, that's about all I've got.
Okay, what would you grade the gameplay then?
I would give the gameplay... I'm hesitant to say this, but I'll give it an A. Though the only reason I'm hesitating is because, as you said at the very beginning, it is undertuned for the level, so you can't really properly enjoy it as it's meant to be enjoyed. And also because I feel it's not as difficult as it used to be. The original Deadmines were more difficult than what we have now, so I feel in some ways we've lost a little something.
Sure. And... even, like, you could probably find that difficulty if you did this at level 85 and as a heroic. It still wouldn't be quite the same because they've nerfed it since this first started, but it's definitely something that you could get a taste of what it once was. And I highly recommend doing so.
Yeah, I mean, I have played it at 85, but I'm reviewing it as the level 20-something dungeon that it was originally as, and that it seems to be more or less intended to be.
Yeah, there's very few people anymore that will do the Cataclysm heroics. I mean, you hit level 85 and you're like, off to Pandaland.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
And how about you, Evan? Where are you sitting at on your grade?
I'm going to go like a B... a B- or so, just because I'm really fond of the gameplay in its original kind of design, with the trash as it was and the bosses as they were, kind of make a little bit more sense than this new kind of arrangement of villains they have here. I do like, again, I'll say, Vanessa Van Cleef, one of the best encounters they've designed. So I'm going to kind of pardon the rest. I think that the kind of clockwork forge where you have like the 4 little robots and you kill them to zap the big robot into life, and then you have one of them go and guard the room with the slag elementals. This is on heroic mode, I guess, while everybody else kites the boss up I mean, that was a pretty fun, cool heroic fight, and actually come to think of it in that kind of fond context of doing this on the heroic mode, that was a pretty good fight, as was the ogre. I guess I'll reserve my my critiques of the direction they went with the village for the lore section, and then in reconsideration, the gameplay now compared to the gameplay then, they're both pretty good for their own reasons. So no, I'll bump gameplay back up to an A, but we'll talk about the lore thing, and maybe I'll have something more critical to say on that.
Okay. And I am also going to be sitting on a flat A. I cannot give it an A+ because gameplay is something that I'm extremely picky about, and I don't know right offhand what, if anything, I would give an A+ to. Just because it has to. I could maybe pick individual bosses that I might give an A+ to, but it is not something that I can just give an entire raider dungeon. It's not that easy. But everything here, especially on the heroic difficulty, is so fantastic that just the way it's presented and just the epicness that you get from playing through this dungeon because of all of the things that are available to you is just, in my opinion, one of the greatest things that this dungeon has ever done. So it becomes an A from me, and it's a flat A all around on gameplay from us. So, you know, I highly recommend, if you are able to, you know, get a few 85s together and go do this at level 85 as a heroic difficulty. Florian, would you like to take the first steps into lore for us?
Yes, I would. Let's try this one more time. I don't know if I missed you guys chatting about anything else. But, this whole Deadmines setup was originally set up by Edwin Van Cleef. He was part of the Stonemasons Guild that did this major construction effort in Stormwind, but then the nobles who run Stormwind refused to pay the Masons for any of their work. Van Cleef was quite angry. He had a lot of the stonemasons start a riot in Stormwind in which a lot of people were killed, and he eventually left for Westfall, started the Defiance Brotherhood with the remainder of the Stonemasons Guild who had followed him, and basically turned them into bandits who were pretty much set on doing nothing but screwing over Stormwind as best they could. The main purpose of the Deadmines dungeon was to refit and rebuild a Juggernaut warship left over from, I want to say, the Second War? Not 100% sure on that, but it was definitely left over from one of the previous wars. And they were going to turn this ship into a pirate ship and use it to disrupt trade with Stormwind. Van Cleef was, of course, defeated and executed by valiant heroes of the Alliance. And now his daughter, Vanessa Van Cleef, has sort of taken up the reins and taken over the Defiance Brotherhood to continue their pointless crusade against Stormwind. And then we beat the crap out of them. And that's pretty much the basic lore of the Deadmines. Not much to it.
And then basically after that, I mean, Vanessa gets upset. She comes back because we defeated her dad, and then we move on from there.
Pretty much.
So then, one of my largest complaints with most of the raids and dungeon stuff that exist within Warcraft is because there's always a whole bunch of bosses and stuff that aren't necessarily attached in any way to the dungeon or the lore and the story itself. None of it really has any weight or anything that really affects anything to do with the dungeon itself. It's just bosses that are there for the sake of being bosses. And that's one of the things that bugs me the most. I mean, because, you know, like with Faux Reaper 5000, you know, with all, you know, a good number of the bosses in here, you know, Helix Gearbreaker, even Glubtalk, you know, it's like none of these people, none of them exactly are, well, have anything that matters at all whatsoever to the story. They're just there as bosses that are in the way and that you have to get through for the sake of gameplay. And that's one of the things that's just like, man, that is lame.
Well, yeah. That's what I was getting at. I think the original bosses were a little more understandable. For example, Van Cleef, you know, kind of himself. I mean, you don't have to spin any kind of revenge story. It's well, it is, I guess, a revenge story. So, like father, like daughter. But the first boss, I can't remember what it was. The second boss was the lumber room guy. He was just a goblin, I think, in a shredder, if I'm not mistaken, which fits very thematically. The boss after that was another goblin, famously dropping the lavishly jeweled ring. I like to think of him as a kind of pimp down there, pimping out all of the goblin slave labor or something. I think he was actually a blacksmith. He was in a forge room. There were a lot of other blacksmithy mobs. They would set you on fire. They had little torches. Makes kind of sense. And then you had this like an additional goblin, I think, the first officer, the skipper, the person that you fight right before Edwin Van Cleef that's patrolling around. He has that staff that everybody wants, Emberstone staff. Everybody wants if you're a caster growing up in level 20. Is that right? Do you remember fighting these bosses, the original iteration?
Yeah, he was Captain Greenskin, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Yep, that is correct.
Yeah,
and
captain.
That staff is still dropped, but it is now dropped by the Foe Reaper 5000.
Right. Yeah. And then I can't remember what the first boss was. I was racking my brain. I think it was just a big ogre.
I don't know.
That tried to smash.
Yeah, he was big generic ogre boss.
Big
Which
boss
he didn't
smash.
really much. Yeah, I mean, you didn't really need an explanation for that, but this new ogre mage boss, who they have the little lore column, and they said that he couldn't control his power, and he was outcast or whatever, and then now he's just a goon for Vanessa Van Cleef, who I guess will assemble any kind of lunatics around her that she can find.
They're all just
it almost
to an
seems
end.
like this new ogre. Yeah, this ogre mage boss kind of seems to warrant more of an explanation and leave you with more questions and answers compared to his predecessor, which I didn't think was a very optimal change. But I don't know. That's just me.
Sure. So then, what would you grade lore then, Evan? Since you had obviously wanted to give this give something along these lines to gameplay, but amended your decision.
I like the old lore of the place. I like how the newbie alliance, Humanarea questing experience is so tied heavily into Westfall and Sentinel Hill and, Stormwind in general and the troubles that are kind of brewing. And then you're fighting the Van Cleef's rogues constantly, the Fires Brotherhood. And then here's the kingpin of the whole organization, right? I mean, the most deadly mobs in all of Azeroth,
right,
as far as player kills are just all here in Westfall. So, I mean, it's cool when a dungeon isn't like, oh, here's 2 quests to prep you for this dungeon, now go for it, a lot of these older dungeons, especially in the lower level areas, had actually 1 through 60 content entirely. Was every zone kind of culminated in this dungeon, and I feel like Deadmines is much of that for all of Westfall, especially in some other outlying areas as well. In this iteration, though, I mean, you got Horatio Lane, that kind of FBI agent kind of thing, kind of tongue-in-cheek character they have on the Alliance storyline for some of the new Cataclysm content now. So he is tying things kind of together. I don't know. Guess trying to justify why I don't like Horatio Lane. Perhaps I don't need to. Yeah, I don't know. He's a little childish, confusing, kind of loopy character, almost like Harrison Jones. Like I don't. It doesn't really tickle me all the kind of tongue-in-cheek camp, I guess, that kind of gets associated in the kind of rough outline parodies. So this lore isn't as good to me as the more complex and kind of deep and I don't know, grounded lore as prior.
Sure, it's basic.
Whereas some of the gameplay, some of the gameplay changes they've made were actually really inspired, and I actually like a whole lot the entire heroic lineup from Cataclysm itself. Lore fell a little bit short though for me in that respect, and
you
so
give it a
lore C. Yeah, C sounds good for me. I feel like a C in my heart.
Florian
is the right grade.
I'll agree with that C assessment. This is definitely a C dungeon lore-wise, even if it is stellar in every other way. It's a serviceable basic revenge story, but there's just not enough tying into the lore here, and especially with the old Westfall storyline leading into it, which was awesome, and this new, CSI parody thing is just pretty crap, and I don't much care for it. So the current lore, I'm just going to have to give it a C because it's not that good, not that much there.
Fair enough. It's pretty weak, and even by just, you have to fit in standard tropes somewhere. The standard archetype story. I mean, we constantly get things remade over and over again with the same story, and, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, and unfortunately this time it's just, there's normally those remakes have to have a little bit of polish, and this one doesn't really get any polish. There's nothing that really makes it unique or special in any way. I'm going to give it a B, just because it isn't bad. It's just not unique. It's not interesting or new. It's just very standard, very regular, and very just what it is. Nothing in this... there's nothing truly memorable here or anything like that in any way. So that's where the unfortunate part of it comes, is that it's just, there. So that puts, it does hurt it, but it's still something that you can enjoy to the fullest. So, enjoy it. Technical difficulties aside, we made it to the end of the show. If you were questioning what technical difficulties, that means I did my job well. If you would like to... We didn't have a mailbag because we didn't have any questions or anything like that. If you'd like to contact the show, though, we love questions. We love feedback. We are happy to have them. And there you can contact us via email at thecastbar@gmail.com, via Twitter at castbarpodcast, or via phone. You can call and leave us a voicemail at 508-738-2278. You can find all of our shows on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. If there's somewhere else that you need it to be so that you can listen to it, please let me know, because I'm not readily aware of anywhere else that it should be. So just let me know. The music for our bumpers is done by Kevin MacLeod. You can find all of his work at incontact.com. I believe all of it is royalty-free. I know everything we use is royalty-free, which means you can use it for free, give him credit, and you can use it as much as you need. Otherwise, you can pay him some money and, not have to do what I'm doing right now. If you'd like to get a hold of me, I have my own Twitter, which is at Schwahn Michael. Spelling is in the show notes. Evan, where are people able to get a hold of you at?
The best way to get a hold of me is on Twitter, also at EDCWow.
And Florian.
Well, I would prefer that someone send an email to the Castbar to contact me, preferably with a question that we can put on the show. But if you don't want to do that, you can follow me on Twitter at Phalanx, spelled F-A-L-A-N-G-X.
Wonderful. All right, guys, let's get out of here. Have a good night.
Aid me!
Oh,
Something
no.
is doing? Grant me your strength. No time for play. Me busy. Leave me alone. Animality. Me not that kind of work. Sweet. Yeah. Ha. Get off. No. I will wield your strength.